Hello, my name's Angie Holden, and I'm the blogger and YouTuber behind The Country Chic Cottage. Today we're going to talk about images, fonts, and licensing. That last part is definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to. So I'm going to talk about sources for images and fonts to use for your small business. But with those, you are going to want a commercial license if you're going to sell the products that you make. So let's talk about licensing first, because it's definitely the most important portion of this video. So when you are searching for an image, let's say I pull up Google and I search for an image, all of the images that it pulls up are actually copyrighted by someone. As soon as I take a picture with my camera, even just my phone here, when I take that picture, I am the photographer and that photo belongs to me. I own a copyright on that photo as soon as I take the picture. So that means when you Google an image or a file, that is owned by someone. So if I was to take my iPad, draw something in Procreate, that drawing would then be copyrighted to me because I drew it. So that means that whatever images you use to put on the things you're going to sell, you need a commercial license in order to do that. So you need a license from the individual that owns the image or owns the drawing, the file, the font, what have you. You need a license from them in order to make the product that you're going to sell to your customer. So how do you get that license? You get that license by purchasing the file, the image, the drawing, the font, whatever, and purchasing a license with that. So the websites that I'm going to go over today are great places to start, but they are not exclusive. There are tons of websites out there where you can purchase the items that you need to make your crafts and get those commercial licenses. I just want to caution you that you will need a commercial license for each of the files that you use. And I talk about purchasing files a lot because generally you will need to purchase a file in order to get a commercial license. However, there are websites that offer up freebies. Some of the ones we're going to talk about today offer up free files all the time that come with a commercial license. But every file that you download, you want to keep up with the license that you get. So you'll probably download it and you'll get a file with, say, an SVG file, a JPEG to print on your sublimation printer, what have you. And along with that, there will probably be a PDF that contains your license, and it tells you specifically what you can do for that. Some licenses have restrictions. So you might be restricted to make 500 or 1,000 of something, and then you'll need to purchase that file again to get a new license to make, say, 500 more. So you always want to pay attention to the type of license that you get, as well as how many you can make. And then when we're talking about selling your crafts, most of those licenses are for things that you make at home, make at your business. If you're doing something like print on demand, so I have a file and I want to put it on a shirt, and I send the file to another company and they're going to print it for me onto the shirts, and then I'm going to sell the shirts. For print on demand, that's usually an entire other license. So you'll want to make sure that you're licensed for print on demand once you get into that, if you ever do. So before we get to those websites, we are going to go into one other legal consideration, and that is known trademarks. Let's say like Disney characters, Mickey Mouse, for example. If I go to Etsy and I search for Mickey Mouse SVG file, I'll probably get tons of listings. A lot of those are probably saying they have a commercial license that they can sell me. None of those people have the right to sell a commercial license to the file that they're trying to sell. The only person that could sell you a Mickey Mouse SVG file would be Disney itself. And trust me, you don't want to pay the price that they're going to charge you for a commercial license for their images, fonts, what have you. You don't want to pay those. So those people on Etsy actually don't have the right to sell you a commercial license. So Disney can actually come after you. And yes, you can explain that you purchased it off Etsy and this was the file and this was the designer, but you are still liable for making something that was not properly licensed. So you do always need to be careful with trademarks, with images, with the Mickey Mouse example, even fonts, quotes. Certain words, like say Super Bowl is one example, can be trademarked and can't be used. Now I don't want to scare you with all of that. However, places like Disney are known to go after small handmade sellers that are infringing on their rights and using their images illegally, which means you just need to steer clear of all things Disney and other things that have a trademark like that. Now, how do you find out if something has a trademark? You can search for that. There are US websites that you can search for. Like you could search for a quote from an author and see if someone owns that. That way you would know if you had the right to use it or not. Now, you can go overboard with this. So you could search for every little thing you're using and it could be very, very cumbersome. I would just say use common sense, use caution, search for things if you feel like you really need to, but you're probably going to make mistakes. And some company is going to contact you and say that they own the rights to whatever you're using. If they truly do, and you don't have the proper licensing, just be very responsive to those requests. Take down the listing for whatever that they're questioning. Contact a lawyer if you need to at that point. But definitely be very responsive and do what they ask you to do. Now, with any shopping platform, Etsy, Shopify, whatever, if you get too many of these trademark violations, they can just completely shut down your shop. So you absolutely need to be cautious, be careful, but realize that mistakes are probably going to be made. Like you are probably going to miss something. You're probably going to make a mistake along the way. I feel like all of us have done that at some point, like I've done that myself. Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and be aware of the laws. And definitely contact a lawyer about legal advice about copyrights and trademarks if you feel like you need to. So now that all that business portion is over, I'm going to talk about 5 places to find images and SVG files, and I'm going to talk about 5 places to find fonts. They're in no particular order at all, and there are way more than 5 places on the internet where you can get files, fonts for your crafts to sell. These are just kind of my 5 favorite of each of these. And these places are also not very expensive. So I do feel like they also have deals or bargains, and some of them even have free files. So note that when you go to each of those. So let's run through 5 places first of all to find files and images to use for your crafts to sell. The first one is Creative Fabrica. They have millions of images. I don't even know how many freebies. There are probably hundreds of thousands of freebies. There's so much on this website that you can search for. They have sales all the time. Even the prices on the things that aren't for sale are usually really, really great. I personally have a subscription, so you can get a subscription to a lot of these sites where you pay a monthly fee and you have access. In the case of Creative Fabrica, you have access to everything on their site with a subscription and a commercial license to everything. So you can go there at any time, type in whatever you need, whatever your customer's asking for, find probably thousands of files to choose from, pick your favorites, and use those in your crafts to sell. They have sublimation files, they have SVG files, they also even have fonts. So I would definitely say that this is like a one-stop shop for me, and I personally use it a lot. My next option is Design Bundles, and it is similar to Creative Fabrica. The files themselves I love from Design Bundles. The only thing is I had a subscription there at one time. The subscription for me to Design Bundles was a little confusing. Like you get credits and you need to spend those credits and you can run out of credits, and it was a little confusing for me. I didn't like it as well as Creative Fabrica, but you might. You might like their files better, you might like the subscription better, and that's okay. There's probably a website on this list for everyone. Next up is Etsy. So I do feel like you can find really, really great files on Etsy made by fellow small business owners. So it's a great way to support another small business. The only thing I would say is be careful, like I talked about in the beginning, that they actually have the rights to sell you a commercial license. So if you see anything fishy on their entire store on Etsy, so I kind of look at the store, if I see anything fishy, anything I think there's no way they have the rights to sell that, I just won't purchase anything from the store itself, even just a basic SVG file. That's what I do to protect myself, but you can do whatever you would like. But do use caution when searching on places like Etsy, because like I said, it's not as regulated maybe as some of the other places. Next up is the Hungry JPEG, and I do like them for SVG files, but I really, really like them for sublimation stuff. especially if you like to pull elements together and sort of piece them together to make your own sublimation files. So they have a lot of packs that are made up of like small individual images, and you can kind of place those together to make your own sublimation designs. So if you want to get creative with, say, you're designing, however you can't draw, you don't like to draw, whatever, what have you, the Hungry JPEG might be a good option for you. Purchase a few bundles, start putting those together into kind of your own designs for sublimation. Next up is Craft House. It is primarily SVG files, and they have a ton, and they also have a really great subscription, so I went ahead and added them as well. And it has fewer files than something like Creative Fabric or Design Bundles. However, I do find that some of those larger websites will take Creative Fabrica, for example. So they have millions of files, and it can get overwhelming. So you search for something and you get thousands and thousands of results, and I sometimes scroll for 10 or more pages before I find exactly what I want. With Craft House, you'll search for something and you'll probably get fewer results, and I just find it less overwhelming. I don't have a subscription there, but I do often go there to look for files because it is a little less overwhelming than some of the other sites. So that is my 5 places to get your files and images. However, I did want to mention there are so many other sites. There are small business owners that have subscription websites. Hey, Let's Make Stuff, for example, she has one where she has an SVG subscription. So you can probably find tons of people where you could buy SVG files individually from them. I have a shop myself. Or you can find small businesses that have subscription models, like Corey's site. So there are tons of those, and you just need to kind of shop around. Follow your favorite designers on social. That's where they're going to share their latest files, things they make with their files, whether they have a subscription or not. So you can kind of learn from there what they offer and then decide on which files, which subscriptions are for you and your customers. So now let's talk fonts. The same licensing rules, first of all, that we talked about at the beginning apply to fonts. So when you use a font in your projects, you do need a license to use that font if you are going to sell what you make. So always keep that in mind, that the fonts that you have on your computer, if like when you purchased your computer there were some fonts on there, you need to make sure that you have a commercial license for those. And then you might see free fonts listed frequently. Sometimes you get a commercial license when you get a freebie, other times you don't, and you need to purchase the commercial license separately. So again, always be cautious about the commercial licensing. Okay, so now I'm going to go through my 5 sources for fonts. The first being Font Bundles. This is by far my favorite place to go. So they have freebies and they have really great sales. Like they have dollar days where you can get bundles, huge bundles of fonts for $1. And fonts are my weakness, by the way. So I really, really love fonts. Way more than shopping for images. I'll shop for fonts any day of the week. So I love to find fonts, especially on Font Bundles, where they have the bundle of fonts together. I get new to me fonts to play with in my designs. So fonts are definitely something I'm always keeping an eye on. So Font Bundles is my personal favorite. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. Of this list, Font Bundles is my favorite. The next one is defont.com. I put them on here because they seem to have a lot more fonts than any other website. If I see a name of a font somewhere and I don't know where to get it, a lot of times I can search defont and find it. So I put them on here because they seem to have a wider variety of fonts. Next up is Crella. I do like them, especially for really unique fonts. I find more unique fonts on there than other websites. And yes, they have a great freebie section. And then next, I already mentioned them in the images portion, was Creative Fabrica. Again, I have a subscription, so I get a lot of fonts from there. They'll have font bundles as well. You can grab those. So Creative Fabrica is another great source for those fonts. And finally, Creative Market. So if you've never heard of Creative Market, they actually have images and things too a lot of times. I feel like fonts is where they shine, like at least to me. Creative Market is basically like the Etsy for digital design goods. So it's small businesses and they are selling their own fonts that they've made digitally, either by lettering or like digitally drawing fonts, and they sell them through Creative Market. So this is a great place again to support other small businesses. So I always like to support small businesses when I can. So for me, Creative Market is a great place to do that with digital products. So if you've never heard of Creative Market, I highly recommend it. Go there, search around. I definitely think you'll find something that you want to try. So there you have my favorite sources for files and fonts and a little advice on licensing. So now I do have a little freebie for you, first of all. So at the more information link below this video, you can head there. And I do have an email list that I send out weekly freebies to. This includes images and fonts. And like I said, a lot of times those freebies come with a commercial license. So if you want to get those regular emails, get an email every week with an entire list of freebies, then definitely sign up at my more information link, and then I'll start sending you those emails with the freebies every week. And then when you get those, what I encourage you to do, since you are running a small business, click the freebie, like it, you want to download it, look on the web page. Does it say it comes with a commercial license? If it does, a lot of times you can click the license, you can read it, make sure that it applies to you, then download the freebie, and as always, be sure to keep up with those licenses. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section, ask away. If you like this video and it helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I have videos just like this one every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.